Chibeze Ezekiel, who is an environmentalist with many years experience, 7 or 8 years experience working in environmental natural resources sector. He is expert in policy engagement and advocacy, budget tracking and analysis, and also gender issues. He's on a number of platforms, and he is very well known globally for his climate activism. Chibeze is also a youth exponent in terms of activism in Africa, building movement for clean energy and climate actions. So now we're moving more in the direction of alternatives. And who is better to address this than Chibeze? Chibeze Ezekiel, speaking all the way from Ghana. Chibeze, you have the floor now.
Thank you very much, Nemo, and good morning, still in Accra's morning here, and good afternoon to the rest in Nigeria. My presentation is centered on the building movement for clean energy and climate actions. So basically, I work with the Strategic Youth Network for Development, which is basically a youth-led NGO, focusing on youth contributions in the governance of our natural resource sector. Somewhere last year, we formed a bigger platform to bring all youth together, known as the Youth in Natural Resources and Environmental Governance Platform. So basically, we do a number of policy-level advocacy and community-based advocacy. We move to the streets, we do campaigns, we organize the movement, to champion renewable energy issues in Ghana. So to the thrust of my submission or presentation, so in terms of when it comes to movement building, it will be good to understand what movement is all about. So movement, one simple definition of movement has to do with a program or series of acts that seems to work together towards a desired end. So things coming together to achieve a common agenda is a kind of a reform movement. But in our context, when we say a movement, it's basically a loosely organized effort by a large group of people, to achieve a particular goal, typically a social or political one, or to some extent an environmental one. So it's a movement that people come together to champion or demand for a social change. So that is what basically a movement is. Now, having known or have a fair idea what the movement is all about, I don't want to move on to what it means to build a movement. So in building a movement, it's basically about working on a collective processes and infrastructure that create shared vision, strategy, and action, across different areas of social, economic, and ecological justice. So the key words there are shared vision, strategy, and shared action. So in building a movement, all the processes, everybody involved must come with a common understanding that we have a shared vision, a shared strategy, and a shared action towards achieving, our particular aim or objective. Now, there are different types of movements, and I wish to classify them into 4 groups. The first one is what I call the legal or the formal group. There are some movements that tend to organize or tend to register. So they have legal, status. So it becomes a registered movement. And then we have the loose movement or informal movement, which is often the case because most of the movements we see around us are loose. They are informal. People come together, institutions come together based on a common understanding, shared vision, shared strategy, and shared action that let's come together to achieve a common aim. So those kind of movements are quite, a lot, and they are unregistered. Again, movements can also be formed based on ad hoc. It could be done just for a specific issue. So once that issue is resolved or once that aim is achieved, the movement gets disbanded. So the movement is just formed to attain a particular agenda, and once we achieve that agenda, then that movement seeks to exist. So that is a form of a movement, or in terms of the last span of a movement. And the last form of a movement I want to share is the long term. It's a kind of a movement that lasts for a long time. It could, for example, climate change movements, have been working over the years, and I'm sure we will keep working in the years to come. So it's a long-term kind of movement calling for attention demanding for accountability, holding our policymakers accountable. So it's a consistent effort or activity we keep on doing. So that is a long-term kind of movement that we engage in. So in building a movement, it is important to also look at some of the advantages, of a movement. A few of them include, one, there's strength in numbers. So movement is about numbers. So the more we are, the more we have in terms of strength. We are stronger, as compared to two or a few individuals trying to pursue an agenda. Again, movements have a lot of recognition as against individual organization or a number of persons. So if you're in a movement about hundreds of people, thousands of people marching, there is more recognition. For example, I mean, when we see around us today, what is happening in US and some part of UK and in other countries, because the Black Lives Movement, because of the movement, the mass movement, people hitting on the street, so it's creating more attention, more recognition. So that is one advantage, of building a movement. The other advantage of building movement has to do with resource mobilization, because of the kind of people that come together. You have people who are able to contribute with their resources in terms of financial resources. Others bring along their technical ability. Others bring about even their human body, is by itself, is a resource. So that if the government gets to know, or policymakers get to know that, oh, there's a large number of people making a huge demand, that means that, that group is able to be recognized because of the resources that they mobilize based on the skills of members and also the financial capability of members. So that's one other advantage of building movement. The last advantage I want to share has to do with the impact. So again, movements make a lot of impact, as compared to individual organization. There's a saying that if you work alone, you can go fast, but if you work with others, you're able to go far. So with movement, you're able to spread and make more impact as compared to having individual campaigns or programs or activities. The downside of movement building has to do with challenges when it comes to decisions in choosing the right kind of strategies, the right kind of tactics to adopt, in running a movement. Because I mentioned earlier on that in building a movement, 3 key words must come into play: shared vision, and shared strategy and all that. So if in coming to that conclusion, we may differ in a bit, because we can all say, okay, that we all want to hit this particular destination, but how do we get there? The how is usually the challenge, because one group will propose this, another group will propose that. So that becomes a bit of a challenge. So that may delay, decision-making processes as far as movements are concerned. The other challenge has to do with political threat, because if I want to narrow it down to the kind of work we are doing, we have a government that wants to build a coal plant, and normally they give us a number of reasons why they think coal plant is good. They claim that coal plant, one, is a cheaper form of power generation, and number two, it also creates job opportunities. And more importantly, it guarantees availability of power, that is needed for the industries and for community people. And of course, it could also be a political issue, because governments want to give more light so they can be voted, and still stay in power. So any effort to derail government in some of these decisions can lead to political threats. So that is one of the disadvantages of that. So once you move in that kind of a movement, government must see us as people who are trying to impede on their plans, and therefore it could lead to some political undertones. And some people at that point are even threatened. Some have even lost their lives, all because of this threat from political figures. The other key disadvantage is dissenters. Sometimes you can have people coming together to run a movement or to push a certain agenda, but over time, you will have people falling out, and some may even come out publicly to challenge the position, of the whole movement. And sometimes you begin to wonder whether the movement is together or the movement is now breaking apart. So people dissent, and when they dissent, it ends up breaking the front, of movement, because movement is supposed to have a common voice, one agenda, one mission. But once you have dissenters, they tend to drag the movement or they tend to collapse the movement. And sometimes it could be the influence of political people, because they plant the people in there just to muddy the waters or just to create confusion among the movement assignment or the movement vision. So those are some of the disadvantages when it comes to movement building. Now, so I quickly want to run through a simple case study in Ghana that we were able to achieve a common agenda as a result of building a movement. Somewhere in 2015, the government of Ghana came out with a scoping notice to build a 700 megawatts coal-fired plant. So that was an issue, and for us as a youth group, as CSOs, we had to take a position, and that led to formation of a movement against that. So the coal plant basically is led by a Chinese energy group, that's the Chinese Shenzhen Energy Group. And it's supposed to be a $1.5 billion project loan by Chinese African Development Fund. And then every year, the project, according to the project, we were hoping to import 1.5 million to 2 million tons of coal from South Africa annually. That's quite huge. And then also the whole idea or the rationale for the coal plant, by government is to help grow, or meet the demand, the ever-growing demand, of citizens in the private sector, and also to end what became popularly known in Ghana as doomsday. Doomsday talks about, the erratic, power fluctuation. Power comes on, it goes off, comes on, it goes off. So we had the term doomsday in Ghana. So the coal plant was intended to address this particular challenge. By government was that it is cheaper to generate energy with coal, and that it also creates employment, which is using that as a bait, to champion why there's a need to build a coal plant in Ghana. So this were, the rationale behind the need to build a coal plant by the government of Ghana. So, and then we came out, with a movement, to fight against this plant. So these are just a couple of advocacy issues that we used. Again, we challenged government to give us, because there are different types of coal. We have the piat, the lignite, black coal, and the anthracite. So we were asking government to give us what kind of coal are they hoping to import from South Africa. Again, we demanded for the characteristics of the fly ash, which is the waste from coal. And then also for the purposes of free, prior, and informed consent, we asked for the details of the NGOs and all the local stakeholders who were engaged, because they must be engaged and properly briefed on the impact or the consequences of the coal plant. And also we made an argument that in coming out with a scoping report, government must not only give us information on fossil fuel-based projects, but there must also be information on non-fossil fuel. The report must be balanced, but that document was skewed towards fossil fuel-based projects. Again, we raised the issue of the effect or the impact on biodiversity as a result of the coal plant. We also demanded for the kind of specific jobs that government is claiming to create as a result of the coal plant. And then we gave another scenario that a similar power plant was built somewhere and the youth demonstrated because of marginalization, and noise pollution. So again, what is the guarantee that this coal plant will not lead to a similar marginalization or demonstration by young people in a community? Again, we also confronted EPA because EPA is supposed to give approval, for the construction of such project or such plant. So EPA prepared to be held accountable, so it was one issue that we took the EPA on. And again, we also came up with the issue about reliability of the supply of coal from South Africa, given a case of the West Africa gas pipeline. Ghana signed an agreement with Nigeria to receive gas, to power our thermal plant. But consistently, we're having short, gas cuts. We're not getting the flow of gas from Nigeria because of financial issues, because of political issues. So, that didn't solve our problem. So we then asked, in the same line, what is the guarantee they were going to get continuous supply of coal from South Africa, based on this gas pipeline, experience we have. And again, we raised the issue of Ghana's commitment to the Paris Agreement, that we cannot go and sign the Paris Agreement only to come back home and make an effort to build a coal plant. So this was some of the arguments that we raised in challenging government on their need to build a coal plant, all in the name of advocacy. So not only were we dealing with government, at a political level or policy level, we also went to the community to engage people in the community. So this is what we call the people's power. So these are the people who live in a community. So we have to bring them up to speed about the consequences and the effects of the coal plant. So we did a number of community engagement, the chief and the elders, the fishing community around where the coal plant was supposed to be built, the fisher folks. We have to educate them, let them understand what they are likely to lose, the impact of the coal plant, to have them to bring them on board, in terms of our campaign. So it was all part of the movement building, together. We did a couple of publications just to draw attention to the negative impact of the coal plant. This is some media engagements, and then some social media campaigns as well. And then, so this is the proposed site for the coal plant in Ghana, where we want to visit. So after all that, the movement that we did, the campaign, the advocacy effort we did, the government of Ghana came out to publicly announce that that was led by the Minister of Environment, that Ghana is not going to build a coal plant. Seated close to him is Miss Regina McCarthy. She was a former EPA coordinator during the Obama regime. So government came out very clearly to say that, okay, we are not going to build a coal plant. But we didn't end there. Whilst we were campaigning against a coal plant, we were proposing renewable energy as better alternatives. So we did our own community engagement. We went to places, we engaged citizens, those who were already using different types of renewable energy, to, as it were, capture and document their own experiences, to showcase that indeed renewable energy is the right alternative for all of us in terms of accessibility, in terms of meeting the energy demands of citizens. We also did some media engagement, to show why we think renewable energy is far better than coal or fossil fuel. And then again, these are photos of people we engage, private sector, radio stations, community members, even a church using a solar system. We're trying to capture some examples of people who are already using renewable energy. So all we need to do at the country level is to upscale and provide the relevant enabling environment, for people to also, delve more into renewable energies. So basically that is what we did as a youth group. So in order to sustain that initiative, we are currently developing or building a kind of a youth movement, in renewable energy, to primarily, or among others, campaign against any form or any plan for fossils. So even though we've won that campaign, against coal plant, we're not relenting on our roles. We are not resting. We are still pushing. We are still demanding that government should still invest more into renewable energy to ensure that over time, there'll be no need to even consider renewable energy in Ghana. So wrapping up, just to share the approach that we adopted in Ghana. So we have 3 legs and they all work, it's a cycle, in this kind of a diagram. So we had a policy level advocacy where we engage policymakers, the government ministries, the technocrats on energy related issues. So we have a role to play at that level. And then we have campaigning. So campaigning, we do a lot of campaigning. We develop posters, we develop campaign messages, social media, we engage the media. So we are always on the neck of government when there's international programs like September Week of Climate Action. We hit the streets, we mobilize, so we create, we make noise, we demand for action, all in the name of cutting down or fighting against fossil fuel and promoting renewable energy. So that's another leg of our campaign strategy when it comes to our movement. The third leg, which we are now developing, is the business development and the social enterprise. So the whole idea is that we want to create that particular aspect of our movement or campaign to be able to self-finance some of our campaigns. Because now funding is becoming quite difficult and we can't rely on donors for a long time. In fact, donor funding is depleting in the CSO sector. So how then do we sustain our campaign? How do we sustain our initiative? Maybe in the near future, we may not have the kind of funding we get now. So we are trying to look at ways of generating resources, mobilizing money, internally through social enterprise. So we can have some resources to still maintain and sustain our campaign or make our movement still strong and effective in Ghana. So this is basically the advocacy approach that we are currently adopting in Ghana as far as our movement is concerned. So my final lessons to share, and then I conclude. So the first lesson that I want to share based on our experience is to adopt what I call the submarine approach, which basically means working behind the scenes. Because before we came out publicly, we did a lot of submarine approach, contacting community people underground. We went to the community, spent about 3 days or 4 days with them in a community, day and night, getting to understand their psyche, their knowledge, their experience, their feelings. So it was more of a submarine approach. We did our own analysis, research behind the scene. So by the time we came out publicly, we were well fortified. We were well armed with the right information and accurate knowledge. So when we speak, we're able to buttress our point with fact and evidence. So that's one key lesson, I'm sharing with members on the call. They need to adopt a submarine approach, in trying to develop a movement. And secondly, also is to actively and tactically mobilize like-minded people. Even though it's a movement, it's about numbers. It must bring along people who believe in the cause, people who have shared knowledge, shared vision, shared strategy. So it must be like-minded, not anybody at all. People who believe in the cause are the ones who must be brought on board. So it is one lesson we learn, not just bringing anybody at all, but people who believe in the agenda or the cause of the movement. Thirdly, the third lesson I want to share has to do with the need to identify and maximize relevant skills, knowledge, and abilities of team members. It's a movement, yes, but people come in with different abilities, different skills, different expertise. So there's a need to identify and give them the platform for them to maximize those skills, because then collectively, we can now, put all these things together to achieve the bigger aim that we intend to do. For example, there are people who are good with policy analysis, so that is their area of expertise. There are those who are good with social media, development of infographics, posters, that's their skill. So we need to harness all these people and bring them together to achieve the aims of the movement. The last but one lesson I want to share is the need to also reward and appreciate the contributions of committed members in the movement. It doesn't have to be financial reward, but they need to recognize, to appreciate even something simple for them to also feel appreciated of the movement. And then finally, even though it's a movement, there are times where we need to work on nitty-gritties. So there's a need to create task teams on specific areas or issues where necessary. So you put in place more like a task team, 2 or 3 people in a movement to go and work on a paper, and then bring it for for members to have a look at it, and then people can appreciate or align with that particular paper or that particular assignment, and then we hit out there and go about with our campaign. So these are some of the lessons that I have learned as a result of our movement work in Ghana, how we're able to stop the coal plant in Ghana and now promoting renewable energy in Ghana. So basically, this is just a simple experience or knowledge I want to share with you on this particular occasion. Thank you once again for this opportunity.